So the New York Times just came out with its top 100s restaurant list for 2025, and this list is a huge deal. It's like the restaurant critics list that everyone looks to. It's kind of like the Bible, and it's crazy. There's 20,000 restaurants in New York City, and they narrow it down to 100.
I can't even fathom how they do that. And what stood out to me when I was looking through the list is the variety. Like, you expect it's just going to be like the top 100 fanciest hoity-toity restaurants, but it really isn't. It obviously has a lot of cuisines we'd expect to be on it: French, Italian, Japanese, American, Chinese, like those. But then it also has Malaysian, Uyghur, Nigerian, Iranian, Pakistani, Albanian, Scandinavian, like Egyptian, like so many different ethnicities. And then it also has steakhouses and tacos and pizza and burgers. So it covers the whole swath of New York dining.
And the Times list comes out every year, but this year was really different. So the top 10 restaurants were ranked and the rest of the 90 weren't. So that's different than how they usually do it. And it's usually ranked by one Times critic named Pete Wells, but he actually retired last year. So this year was the first time that they had multiple reviewers basically collaborate in making this list.
So we are actually talking to one of the New York Times food critics who helped make this list, Priya Krishna, about this secret process to rank all of these restaurants and look behind the scenes.
So Priya, being a food critic sounds like such a cool job, but we understand that it's such a massive undertaking to compile this list. Can you break down how you even start ranking the top 100 restaurants in the city? Like, where do you begin?
So it was me and Melissa Clark. We were both serving as interim restaurant critics for this past list. And we started with Pete's list, and we decided we were going to scout every single place on Pete's list and make sure that it was still top 100 worthy. And then we made a list of places that we felt were worthy of scouting. And so that brought the total number of places to scout to about 200 places. We visited each of those restaurants. And then when we looked at the list, we were like, oh, we have, like, for example, too many Korean fine dining restaurants. Maybe we need to not over index on that, and wanted to make sure we had a diversity of cuisine, style, price point. And when it came to the top 10, kind of each proposed candidates, and then we each went to the restaurants that we hadn't been to recently on each other's lists. And then we agreed on a mutual 10. Ranking the top 10 was the really hard part. It's just so subjective, and Melissa and I have really different tastes, which I think makes for a better list.
And there must be so much that goes into critiquing food and even judging, because you're judging the whole dining experience, right? Not just the food that, like, we wouldn't even think of as like lay people going to a restaurant. Can you kind of walk us through all of the different elements that you're taking into consideration when you're ranking them?
Sure. I mean, I think the reality is that people are thinking about a lot of these things going into restaurants. And so we want to think about them as well. I am very much like, the food is what is most important to me, but I realize that for diners, it's about a lot of things. It's about the food. It's about the service. It's about how the place makes you feel. It's about how nice the dining room is, not in terms of like how fancy it is, but how much you want to actually spend time in this dining room. Like, are the vibes good? Is it stiff? Is it relaxed? But like, there's just so many things that go into deciding that a restaurant is really special and worthy of consideration. And ultimately it ends up being a mixture of those things. But I try to take all of them into account. Like, I feel like you're either a food diner or a vibe diner. I am definitely a food diner, but I try to think also like a vibe diner.
Yeah, something that really stood out to the list, and you mentioned this, that there's like Michelin starred restaurants, but then there's also like grab and go. There's sandwiches and there's pizza. And I was thinking how hard it would be to rank those, or like pit those against each other.
I'm not judging every restaurant on how fancy it is. I'm judging a restaurant against what it aims to be. If a restaurant aims to serve really amazing falafel at a counter spot, I'm judging it on that. If a restaurant is a $300 tasting menu aiming to, provide really impeccable service and really interesting wines, you cannot judge a, casual restaurant using fine dining standards and vice versa.
And so when you are judging the vibe of a restaurant, do you, I've always wondered, as a food critic, have to wear disguises so that they don't like make the restaurant extra nice and give you like really good service, or is that something that they just say in movies?
Yes. I wore a number of disguises, and after I left the job, I posted all of them on Instagram if you want to take a look. But now the New York Times no longer does disguises.
restaurants will know this critic is here from the New York Times.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I did it because I just truly wanted to have a normal dining experience, and it
Yeah.
just doesn't feel normal when you go as yourself. And, I had experiences where I went as myself and got incredible treatment, and then went in disguise as like a regular person and was kind of totally forgotten. But like at a really great restaurant, it doesn't make a difference.
Honing in on one of the elements that you were obviously probably most taking into consideration would be the flavor and the taste of the food. And you said you and Melissa have very different taste buds. And for you, like what made the top 10 restaurants in terms of flavor really stand out compared to the rest of the 100? Like what were you really judging in those flavors that you were like, oh, this isn't the top?
For me, it's not that I'm looking for particular flavors. I'm looking for flavors and food that tell a really distinct story that could only belong to that chef, or they're doing something really classic and really traditional and just doing it exceptionally well.
If you had to suggest like a couple spots, maybe it could be like one fine dining, one not as fine dining that like every person who visits New York or every New Yorker needs to go to. Like, what would they be?
I think you should go to Sema for like really my favorite dosa on the planet. I think you should go to Ha's Snack Bar for not only an incredible wine list, but just some of the most interesting food you will find in the country. I think the chef described it to me as what if France didn't colonize Vietnam, but the other way around? And I thought that was really interesting.
Whoa.
And I would send them to Bar Kabawa for Jamaican patties.
Oh my gosh, I haven't been to any of these. I need to do that.
We like looked into your background and saw that you've lived in so many different places and you've reported obviously on food across the country. Is there a genre of food in New York that they like the city does better than other places in general?
Pizza. I really strongly believe in New York City pizza supremacy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
even being from Texas, I'm like, there are some good pizzerias, but like, there's something in the water here. Our pizza is superior.
I actually agree with that. I am from the Midwest, so Chicago pizza is
Okay,
like
yeah.
that's such a huge thing. But I agree.
And we noticed that the top 10 that restaurants that were ranked were all in Manhattan. And so we've seen some people be like, oh, maybe all the boroughs weren't represented in the top list, in the top 10. What do you say to that?
For the top 10, we were just going for the restaurants that sort of spoke to us the most, and they happened to be in Manhattan.
We have done a story in the past about the black market for getting reservations to these very high-end restaurants and that there are bots that are constantly grabbing them before humans can. Do you have any tips now that we know that you actually did this in kind of undercover? Do you have any tips for getting into these coveted restaurants?
Set a calendar reminder to make a reservation. Like I would literally set alarms on my phone and wake up and make reservations. Don't be afraid to walk in right at opening. I like kind of love a 5 o'clock or a 5:30 dinner, and so I would
Yeah.
just stand in line with everyone else. Also, just like bar seats, don't be afraid to like go in and chance it at the bar. Like I think eating at the bar is one of my favorite things, and I love that many restaurants in New York still keep their bar open for walk-ins.
And our last question, do you have any tips for us, like regular restaurant goers, on how to assess our food with more nuance? Like, how do we eat and taste our food like a food critic?
I think it's all about context. The more you eat, the more you know. The more bowls of pho you eat, the more you can judge, like, this is a really good bowl of pho. But the other thing that's, like, I think really wonderful about food is that, like, your taste is your taste. Like, everything is subjective. Like, I think that if you have a set of 10 restaurants that is totally different than my set of 10 restaurants, well, I think that's wonderful. I don't think there is any objectivity in food. And I think that's like kind of why I love what I do.